Today is part 2 of my interview with Leigh Ashley. If you haven't watched part 1, I would strongly encourage you to do so. We're continuing our discussion on codependency. And it's not just a one and done conversation. I mean, I'm sure we could probably do several interviews discussing codependency, not just in the betrayed spouse, but also in the unfaithful spouse. You know, my own spouse, Samantha, was very codependent, but you wouldn't know it just looking on the outside. We had to get to an expert, and we had to navigate through so many different layers of emotions to find out that she was struggling with codependency. But I was also incredibly codependent, and it took an expert like Leigh to help me come to grips with the fact that while I felt like I was the man and was so full of pride and some pretty significant narcissistic tendencies, I was actually very codependent. So I hope that you enjoy part 2 with Leigh today. It's my hope, it's my prayer that this interview can help move you down the road of recovery. I have learned, and I know that you'll echo this probably in your own way, but I have just learned for the unfaithful or the betrayed, you cannot get away from the fact that it's going to take bravery on both parties.
Yes.
The betrayed is going to have to be brave and maybe for this particular conversation face their codependent traits and really ante up and get healthy. But the unfaithful has to be brave and face the music and own what they've done and own their reality and not use the betrayed's codependent traits against them, because we're really good at that.
It's not an excuse.
We use anything that we can. Well, you're pushing me away at your controlling, attempts or what have you, or you just need to be okay on your own. And we're shifting gears because we unfaithful can be very controlling and we can be codependent as well. Mm-hmm. What are some signs that the unfaithful is being codependent?
Well, I think you just listed a few.
You're the expert here today.
Yes, well, they do the same thing. It's a more controlling, manipulative stance there. They can also revert to a victim kind of mentality, a helplessness.
Talk more about that.
Well, a learned helplessness, a sense of a neediness where they attempt to pull in the excessive care of their spouse. And so
they're kind of pulling back going, chase me, I want to be wanted because the affair partner wanted me. I felt so amazing. You should want me. And it's kind of, would you call it an emotional laziness? That we just kind of lay back and want them to do all the work? Is it dysfunction?
That's a good question. I think more than laziness, I think we tend to do what's worked for us before.
So good. Because when you're trying to restore a relationship impacted by infidelity, there has to be new patterns. There has to be a decision to no longer just do what worked, because that's not going to work anymore.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
If you were to talk about to a couple who both, because here's the thing, when we walked into Rick's office almost 14 years ago, we came to realize that both of us had codependent nuances, as you would say, both of us. And I think it's pretty common, far more common than people like to say.
Yeah.
If you were to talk about one of the most helpful things that a couple can do when they know they both have some codependent traits, what would be maybe the top thing that you would suggest?
That's a great question. I think what's been most helpful with the work that I've done and observed is to remember you have choices. A lot of times we because of our belief system, we already think that we don't have any choices, and so we tend to feel stuck. And so we can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
And I like to brainstorm and consider every conceivable choice regardless of its moral merit, because it helps to determine what I can and cannot do. In codependency, I don't have a strong sense of self. My sense of self is in the other person.
Wow,
or the perceived relationship.
That's great.
Whatever it is. And so if I don't recognize that I have choices, right, then I'm kind of stuck and I just have to flow and life overwhelms me.
And I'm kind of at the mercy of the other person.
Yes.
And I can't really make any choices until they choose for me.
Right, which is no choice.
It doesn't work.
No. But when you gain a sense of self, then even if it's after that, after you see all the choices, that helps you see what you can and cannot do, what you will and won't do. And so from there, then I can apply my belief system, my moral values, etc. But that's a really important nuance, because if you let's say you come from a faith background and you could never leave your spouse. Like, I just have to endure this. I can never leave my spouse.
When I said I do for eternity.
Right. It's a covenant relationship. If you go through with that, you end up feeling powerless yourself in the relationship. I don't have a choice. I have to stay here. I have to just deal with this.
Yeah.
But if you spend some time and consider, I have all kinds of choices. I don't have to do that way. You gain a sense of identity apart from even a faith system. And from there you can then determine to lay oneself down, well, Lord or whomever, because of what you say, now I'm choosing to, and that's an empowered position.
It's empowering to say, I'm going to do this of my own free will, and I'm going to choose to do A, B, or C.
Right.
But I'm not going to do it just because of religion, my parents, even the kids, although we understand sometimes you do stay married because of the kids. And
sure.
Although the impetus isn't perfect, it's an impetus enough to maybe get both of them into doing recovery work, right?
Yes, and that's really because, well, we're self-actualizing, right?
Yeah.
We need a sense of control over our own lives, especially in a situation that's been out of our control, so overwhelming. I'm not suggesting that that's what one should do.
Sure.
I'm not saying any
But there's
shoulds.
options.
There are options.
And I think the betrayed oftentimes doesn't feel like they have options. If anything, there's a stigma surrounding the fact that the unfaithful has options, choose. But I find that when I help a betrayed spouse understand, look, you have options, you have value, you have meaning. I mean, would you agree that one of the biggest struggles is for the betrayed, when they've been betrayed, to really feel like they have value and that they have worth, because they feel like they've been traded out. They feel like they've just been cast aside. I mean, what are some things that you tell in your own work the betrayed who struggle with that?
Absolutely. That's where we want to reframe identity at its source, right? Your worth and value does not come from who you're married to, how long you've been married,
right.
The kind of relationship that you had. That's a kind of a false construct for your identity. You bring a whole person to that relationship. Right, and a lot of times, if there are those codependent traits or nuances, that person hasn't had a chance to even develop a sense of themselves. What do I like? I've been taught or thought for so long that good people acted this way, had these kinds of hobbies, did these kinds of things, that they don't really know who they are, what they like and don't like, because they've been deferring. Right, that's that overcompliance. I'll release my value system to what you want to do, and then they lose themselves in the relationship.
Right.
So it's kind of a nice time to find and reconnect with who you are, what you like, what makes you tick.
Yeah. The topic of codependency is a tough conversation to have with yourself. And I have found that when you feel codependent, you feel very alone, and you feel kind of ostracized. I think you've shed light on the fact that so many of us are codependent. We don't really always know it. I know the audience is going to love you because you're a safe place, because there's never been 1 ounce of judgment or shame or offhandedness in your comments. If you were to take 1 or 2 minutes and share your heart with someone who's struggling with codependency and wanting to get healthy or find hope, what would you say to them?
I think I would say that there is hope, that you're not defective, that I imagine you feel pretty frustrated, even exasperated right now, and the idea in walking through infidelity that you might have traits that exasperate that, make that worse for you, has got to be incredibly frustrating. But I want you to know that you already have an amazing asset, which is that you care. And that caring is what we want to do, is just help you to use that caring in a more profitable direction. But don't give up. You're not defective, and there are definitely ways to use all the good, all the desire, all the warmth in you. We're just going to use it in a different direction. So don't give up.